Hello, thanks for joining a new video. Today I'm reviewing the Galaxy S25 and S25 Plus, and let's get started. I'm reviewing them together because they share most features and specifications, with clear differences in size and a few other small details I'll mention throughout the video. Let's begin with the price, which will of course differ for each model. The Galaxy S25 has its base model with 12 GB of RAM and 128 GB of storage at a price in Mexico of 19,999 pesos. That's roughly $995, though remember that prices here are not the same as over there. Of course, there are configurations with more storage that will be more expensive. On the other hand, the Plus model has its base model with 12 GB of RAM and 256 GB of storage at a price of 25,999 pesos in Mexico, which is more or $1,295, although I insist the prices here are not the same as over there, those over there. In terms of price, the Galaxy S competes directly with the iPhone 16, which I believe it surpasses quite easily. Meanwhile, the Galaxy S25 Plus is in direct competition with the iPhone 16 Pro. However, when discussing that specifically, I think it doesn't surpass it as easily. I would be interested to see Samsung launch a Galaxy S25 Pro positioned below the Ultra, yet featuring similar specifications. However, in this particular case, this Plus edition is the one that I still don't really consider to make much sense. But let's take our time to slowly describe them. In both instances, we will find a very widespread distribution, not only in online stores, but also in physical stores, phone companies, and more. In the description, I'll leave links to the official store. Regarding the design, we will find something that undoubtedly looks modern. Notice that both models have very thin bezels at the front, making excellent use of space. They achieve a compact design with a large screen size. However, I dislike that they use Gorilla Glass Victus 2. While it's great, keep in mind that Samsung already offers Gorilla Armor 2 with Corning, but it's only on the Ultra model. That glass, besides being much more resistant, also prevents reflections extremely well. It makes the Galaxy S25 Ultra the sole device to use such glass. I would truly love to see this glass available on other models as well, especially since they belong to the Galaxy S25 family. Unfortunately, they are not available on those models. Furthermore, Samsung has consistently put an immense amount of effort into making devices thinner with each generation. In this case, you can really tell they have achieved something exceptional with this one. For instance, in the Galaxy S25, we observe a thickness of 7.2 mm, whereas in the Plus model, it increases slightly to just 7.3 mm. Both devices are exceptionally thin and also extremely light. The S25 weighs in at 162 grams, while the Plus model increases to 190 grams. If you're someone who consistently uses cases on your cell phones, you'll appreciate how thin and light this phone is because even with the case on, it remains relatively compact and manageable. The frames use aluminum for durability without adding much weight. On the right side, there are volume buttons and a power button, along with a small plastic band to aid antenna connectivity. At the top, there are two microphones and another small band. On the left side, you'll find two more plastic bands, similar to the bottom, where there's also a card slot. Nano SIM, you have the ability to fit two cards, but keep in mind that some phone companies might block the second slot, so consider that. Additionally, here we find another microphone, the USB-C port, and the speaker, which features this new single perforation design that we will discuss a bit later. On the back cover, you'll notice a nice design. It's satin, so it might shine a little, but it doesn't fully reflect the image. In addition to that, there are a wide variety of colors available, such as navy blue, silver blue, mint, and others that are exclusive to the Samsung online store, like blue, black, coral, and rose gold. This is undoubtedly one of the device's strengths, as it allows you to choose the color you prefer. I would like to remind you that these devices are water resistant with an IP68 rating, so you don't need to worry too much if they accidentally fall into water, even if it's relatively deep, as they comply with the necessary standards, a high-end device, and it must be noted that they particularly stand out for their remarkable lightness and slimness. The screen quality will be excellent, measuring 6.2 and 6.7 inches diagonally respectively. In the base model, the resolution is Full HD, whereas the Plus model offers a higher resolution due to its larger screen size of 3120 by 1440 pixels. Consequently, the Plus model screen will exhibit greater sharpness, although I must mention that in everyday use, it truly makes a noticeable difference. The calibration of color isn't that easy to perceive. In both scenarios, we notice excellent sharpness, even for smaller texts. They also include a technology known as ProScaler, which enhances image representation by boosting detail through artificial intelligence, making the content appear extremely sharp, even if it's not in its native resolution. In both scenarios, the screens are dynamic AMOLED DOSX, meaning they deliver vibrant colors, high contrasts, and everything one could imagine. Actually, they also feature an impressively high brightness level of 2600 nits when viewing HDR content due to the support for these standards. This means that on platforms like YouTube, Netflix, and other applications, you'll be able to enjoy the content with these features. Furthermore, the photos and videos you capture with this device are also in HDR, allowing you to experience them with a great deal of realism. On the software side, you'll find two options for color calibration, one that offers more intense colors and another that provides more natural colors. If you decide to go with the vivid setting, you also get a manual setting for adjusting the white balance, plus another setting for RGB, and even the intensity of the colors. This means you have all the possible parameters at your disposal to ensure you have the best experience. Additionally, it includes an adaptive color tone option, which automatically adjusts the white balance based on the surrounding environment's white tone. This is a feature I personally appreciate, even though it doesn't always work perfectly when you're on. In the cold light of day, I believe there's definitely room for improvement. The screen, besides providing exceptionally high brightness that makes the content appear fantastic even under direct sunlight, includes a feature known as Vision Booster. This feature, when it senses that you're in a situation with sunlight, has the capability to adjust the colors and contrast of every element displayed on the screen. This adjustment enhances their readability significantly, which is something you will definitely appreciate without a doubt, because it maintains excellent readability. Furthermore, the reduced brightness is also quite comfortable for users. Additionally, an extra dimming option has been included, so if you plan on using the phone extensively at night and want to avoid the discomfort of high brightness, you will definitely appreciate this feature. While it is not a screen with an exceptionally high attenuation rate like many of its competitors, it does have a pending issue. However, for the majority of users, this is something that is quite challenging to notice. In fact, I do not notice any difference between this screen and one with a very high attenuation rate. However, if you're among those people who might detect or feel very tired eyes when using the screen in low brightness, this device won't help much in that regard. By the way, I don't know if you were aware, but now when the battery reaches 5%, you can disable the automatic brightness reduction, unlike in previous generations where it was lowered automatically, which was it's quite annoying, so you are able to maintain the normal brightness even when the battery is very low. When it comes to sound, both of these devices provide us with stereo speakers, offering a sound experience that has good amplitude. What I particularly enjoy is the strong presence of bass frequencies that we can find in both models. Trust me, the speaker quality is excellent. It really surprises me, especially in the Galaxy S25, which is very compact and lightweight, yet the sound doesn't seem to come from such a small device. It is very powerful and with good quality in the bass frequencies. In both cases, they sound very good. Let's listen to a little test, but remember, it's not the same as listening to it live. Keep in mind that with software you'll have features like Dolby Atmos and other settings to enhance dialogues for clearer audio, especially if you frequently use your cell phone to watch series or movies. Additionally, it includes Adapt Sound technology, which conducts a brief test to fine-tune the sound, ensuring you hear it perfectly, tailored specifically for your ears. We are additionally going to find a 9-band equalizer that is available to personalize the sound experience on both the speakers and the headphones, so the software experience is really quite excellent. In fact, it also includes an optimizer that will enhance the sound to gain even more resolution when you're using wired headphones. Moreover, it features application-independent sound, allowing you to have the phone playing some multimedia content on its speakers while you are simultaneously using the headphones. You send other apps' content to a Bluetooth speaker, useful for playing music at a party while listening to WhatsApp audio or watching a video separately. As expected, there's no headphone jack, but it includes high-resolution codecs like API, T-Tex, LDC, and Samsung's SSC. However, it doesn't support the LHDC codec. So be aware if your high-resolution headphones use this codec, you can't fully enjoy them in the highest quality with these devices. I believe that this will be an area for improvement, especially considering they are very feature-rich devices. It's important to keep in mind that Samsung also permits the installation of modules that provide even more options through Good Lock. For instance, in this scenario, you could install Sound Assistant, which among many other features enables you to adjust the volume independently for each application, allowing you to have multiple applications running simultaneously, with some applications set to maximum volume while others are at a lower volume, providing a much more comprehensive experience. As for the microphones, we can see 3, although there might actually be 4 microphones. This is due to the new floating camera design, making it a bit more challenging to notice. As Samsung typically places a microphone in this area, the microphone isn't very easy to observe. But let's go ahead and listen to a test to see how it sounds.
Esta es una prueba de audio grabada con los micrófonos del Galaxy S25 Plus, que son iguales a los del Galaxy S25.
Clearly, voices will be captured with excellent quality. In fact, when you're on a video call, you'll notice that in the quick settings panel, there are options to turn noise cancellation on or off entirely, according to your preference. Now, let's listen to how it performs in much noisier settings like simulations, concerts, and similar environments. And as you can clearly tell, the gain is adjusted perfectly, ensuring you won't experience any distortion or anything similar. It's truly a fantastic all-around audio device. To conclude this segment, I want to remind you that it features a vibration motor on the X-axis, which provides a significantly more premium sensation. This vibration is one that you don't hear, unlike the Z-axis vibration, which is perceived as much simpler. For instance, you'll observe it on the keyboard or while navigating certain sections of the interface where it feels like gentle bounces or soft taps on your hand, providing a premium sensation, which is exactly what one would anticipate in such a costly device. The front camera on both devices features a 12-megapixel resolution with an f2.2 aperture and autofocus, positioned in a very small circular cutout located at the top center of the screen. Let me remind you that both devices allow quick camera access by double tapping the power button, whether the phone is on or locked, and they respond swiftly. Note that it offers 2 levels of zoom. At the narrowest angle, you'll get 9-megapixel photos and a relatively fast capture. As you can see, it doesn't freeze at any point. In fact, we can slide the shutter down to start a burst for multiple expressions, or hold it to record a short video. If we slide up, we can keep recording without keeping our finger on it. Note, it also captures with a palm gesture, which is quite useful. And at the top, we have the option to activate motion photos. These photos cleverly capture a short video at the exact moment you take the picture, allowing you to relive the moment and see what was happening. Interestingly, if you scroll up, you'll find additional options appear, such as selecting the best face when using this technology. So if you took multiple pictures, you can later change your face if it didn't turn out quite right. In certain cases, it might appear more natural than in others. So those are the options available, and we will also find this section at the top. This allows you to create a boomerang effect or apply other effects, making use of this short recording. For instance, you can use slow motion or even disable the moving photo feature. In the top right corner, we will also find the button to load color filters. Notice that these are not just simple filters, they actually allow you to manipulate more specific details, including saturation, temperature, contrast, grain, and various other aspects. Actually, if you find a picture on social media or elsewhere that you like the look of, you can just choose the option to upload a photo. The device will then attempt to interpret the colors in the same way they appear in that picture. This means you don't have to spend so much time experimenting with the editing process. Instead, you simply provide it with the reference, and the device will capture the picture accordingly. While it may not be the widest camera in the industry, others might surpass it, yet it offers a solid balance. The interface has been updated, allowing you to load more options via a small button in the lower right corner. This gives access to features like the timer and photo ratio adjustments. Additionally, you can enable facial beauty options, which include 4 parameters, each with its own intensity selector. The results are precisely the same for both the base model and the Plus model, and honestly, it's one of the best front cameras available in the industry. In fact, when it comes to the Android world, it's possibly the top front-facing camera. Notice the excellent level of detail we observe. The textures are very good and the color rendition is also very impressive. While it may not be the widest camera in the industry, and in that aspect it could be surpassed by other options, it still maintains a really good balance overall. Keep in mind that it has autofocus, allowing you to show close objects even in backlit conditions. However, the preview isn't optimized yet. I think Samsung needs to improve this, as they've already done for the rear camera, but it's still an issue for the front camera. Despite this, the final picture turns out well. Notice how the area that seemed overexposed in the preview has improved lighting, though some areas remain. The light in this photograph is a bit overexposed, which means it's not an absolutely perfect picture. However, I believe it does an excellent job capturing the scene. This is particularly true because it maintains a high level of detail. As I've mentioned, the colors are generally accurate and well represented. When we move to interior settings, you'll notice it continues to maintain a good color rendition. It also retains a very impressive level of detail in areas such as the face, clothing, and other elements. Now, if we consider a nighttime setting, this is the kind of result you can expect. If you're close to a light source, once again, we observe a picture of good quality. It might have slightly less detail than during the daytime, but when compared to numerous other devices, I believe the outcome is quite nice. The darker areas do show a bit of graininess, yet it manages to control it very well. If you're far from any light source, and even if this light is behind you, you'll notice that the result remains positive. It's not perfect because the illuminated area still comes out burnt. However, the face, which is the most important part, I find it comes out really well, showing enough detail and almost no noise at all. Supposedly, you can use the screen to illuminate your face, acting like a sort of flash. But if you're in an environment with warm light, the result might not turn out to be very positive. I really wish that Samsung could automatically detect whether you're in a warm light or cool light setting and then illuminate you with a similar color through the screen of the screen. However, in this instance, I wasn't quite satisfied with the outcome. Now, take a look at the portrait photography at night. Honestly, the result is quite impressive. I've tested numerous devices, and portrait photography, especially at night, often presents many challenges. Yet this device performs excellently, and during the day, it also does a commendable job, though it's not flawless. Please note that in this particular instance, we are dealing with a backlit portrait photograph, and the detection isn't entirely accurate. You'll notice that the edges appear somewhat cloudy. Even in this scenario, which involves a very complex object, the system failed to maintain the object in sharp focus. However, in other portrait settings that are somewhat simpler, let's say, where there isn't any backlit scenery and where the object is not as thin, you could potentially achieve good results. This is especially true for the pleasing bokeh effect that is created in the background, though. It still lacks highly accurate detection in the hair region, therefore it's not flawless, but it does perform well in self-portraits. On the back, we will discover a 13mm ultra-wide camera with 12 megapixels, an f2.2 aperture, and fixed focus. Additionally, there's a 50-megapixel main camera featuring an f1.8 aperture, autofocus, and optical stabilization. It utilizes cropping within the sensor to achieve 2x digital zoom with optical quality. Moreover, it includes a 69mm telephoto camera with 10 megapixels. f2.4 aperture, autofocus, and optical stabilization. Now, let's be clear, Samsung's hardware at the photographic level is a bit too basic. The ultra-wide camera lacks autofocus, which means it can't provide macro capabilities. Additionally, it offers a standard resolution and doesn't include a high-resolution sensor. However, in this particular case, I don't see that as a major issue, but where I do find it more concerning is with the telephoto camera. It comes with a sensor that is only 10 megapixels, which, while it provides you with a bit more illumination since the pixels might become slightly larger, the truth is that the sensor itself isn't very large either. And without having a high-resolution sensor in this camera, we won't notice a digital zoom of such high quality. However, we will soon see that Samsung has done an incredible optimization because, although the hardware is straightforward, I believe the results can compete against rivals with superior hardware quality. It appears to me that Samsung has done a great job with optimization. However, we would absolutely prefer to see the full potential of Samsung by incorporating high-resolution sensors into the telephoto camera. This is particularly important because when you compare it to previous generations, we are seeing the same cameras. There is no real evolution, and this will be one of the areas where we can most criticize these devices. Note that this provides a snappy experience when launching many pictures. we can swipe down for a burst of up to 100 pictures. And in our test, capturing the number 3, we found it anticipates the capture moment, so you don't have to wait for the exact moment. The device offers intelligent behavior. The burst mode takes just over a quarter of a second to initiate, and the intervals between each photo are minimal. If you can effectively utilize this feature, combined with its limit of 100 photos, it provides excellent versatility to capture the precise moment you desire. Once more, we will encounter the motion photography options, similar to what we observed with the front camera. Additionally, the color filters feature is available, allowing you to upload a photo that you might already like in terms of its appearance. You can use your colors so the device interprets them similarly, allowing you to take a picture with the same hues. Now, the additional options include the beauty feature, typically for the front camera, but here it works for the rear camera with the same 4 settings. Remember, you can adjust exposure or focus by touching. However, we will also have the ability to access a professional mode that is more advanced. In this mode, we can modify the ISO up to 3200, adjust the shutter speed up to 30 seconds, and make changes to exposure compensation, focus, and white balance. Additionally, we can select the metering type at the top, and there is even an exposure monitor available. For instance, if certain areas appear slightly overexposed, you can easily mark them, allowing you to address that particular section more effectively. And in the settings, we also have the option to enable raw photo capture when we're using this Pro mode. However, if you're looking for even higher quality photos, I would recommend accessing Expert RAW. This is an application developed by Samsung that offers more advanced features. For instance, we can capture photos with 24 megapixels in automatic mode, a feature that the iPhone provides in its native camera. I really wish Samsung would implement this as well, but fortunately we do have this option available within Expert RAW. Once you download and install the additional application, you can access it from the main screen icon or the modes list. Just grant all necessary permissions and you're set. As you can see, the photo capture is in 24 megapixels, offering excellent quality. You could also install Camera Assistant via the Galaxy Store to further adjust native camera settings. This application is an official Samsung app. It's important to note that it offers you the ability to add various shortcuts, such as cropping to 2x zoom, modifying image smoothing, disabling automatic lens shift or distortion correction, and even extending the digital zoom, among other features. Therefore, if you're someone who enjoys adjusting all the possible parameters, you'll find this application quite enjoyable because it provides you with the opportunity to modify the behavior of numerous aspects of your Galaxy device. For document capture, the device will auto-detect it, though it's not very quick. When you press this button, it'll first recognize and extract the text digitally. However, if the scan button appears, note that it didn't detect the edges of my image initially for some reason. I'll try again, and now you'll see the corners appear, and you can press both the use the scan button as that download button that appears, and it will handle the image cropping, and that's all. However, I would have preferred a more advanced scanner, as it lacks color optimization, doesn't let you add pages, and there's no straightforward button to export to PDF. Now, you can still do it through the share menu by selecting print, but it's more complicated. On the other hand, there are other devices like those from Motorola or Honor that feature much more advanced scanners. Here, you perceive something much simpler. Fortunately, when it comes to scanning QR codes, the task is quite simple and responds with good speed for these cameras. I must tell you that I did notice a difference between the base model and the Plus model, specifically in the ultra-wide camera. This picture you're seeing is the one we captured with the ultra-wide camera of the Plus model. Note that it has good detail, obviously adequate for an ultra-wide camera. But now, take a look at this picture. The same location was captured using the base model, and it definitely lacks the expected quality. You can notice that it appears somewhat out of focus, and it doesn't seem to be a high-quality photograph. I'm unsure if this issue is specific to my unit, or if it's a common problem with all Galaxy S25 models featuring the ultra-wide camera. This is the only difference I observed compared to the Plus model. In all other cameras and modes, they are exactly the same. Here you are observing another picture taken with the ultra-wide camera. Now this is with the Plus model again, so you can clearly see the difference. This time we have placed it side by side with the Galaxy S25 low model. Notice how it becomes very evident that the base model is somehow out of focus, or something is amiss if you don't zoom in on the image. You don't really notice that it is of poor quality at first glance, but if you want to pay attention to some details of the picture, that's when you start to notice this bad behavior, which honestly is quite unpleasant in a flagship device. I hope it's just a flaw in the unit I have. Please let me know in the comments if you have the Galaxy S, how the ultra-wide camera performs for you. As I tell you, the rest of the cameras are quite good. Observe the main camera, it provides good detail and excellent color rendition. We don't see exaggerated chromatic aberration in these light leak areas, nor do we notice serious distortions at the edges. Therefore, the quality is quite correct. Additionally, this feature allows us to crop within the sensor to apply a 2x zoom while still keeping the optical quality intact, which means short-range zoom is excellently handled. When we need a bit more zoom, we have the camera equipped with a 3x optical zoom, ensuring we maintain high quality in this setting without any concerns. Furthermore, the lens not only interprets the lighting conditions effectively, but also enhances the colors, making them appear vibrant and true to life. Now we are appreciating a 10x zoom picture. In this case, it relies entirely on the digital zoom and the information that the telephoto camera can gather. Honestly, even at 10x, it is still quite impressive. It seems that Samsung has somehow optimized these resources exceptionally well, because to be honest, the hardware is not that advanced or sophisticated. This would be the 20x zoom photography, which I would say is the ultimate level, where the photograph still maintains an acceptable quality, although the manufacturer allows you to go up to 30x digital zoom. However, I consider that at this level, the detail is not as high anymore. In my opinion, in this zoom section, Samsung is being matched even by some mid-range devices where multiple manufacturers are starting to include this type of telephoto cameras. Therefore, I believe Samsung should begin enhancing the zoom in these base models. The Ultra model does achieve a much higher zoom, but both the base model and the Plus model are falling a bit behind in terms of performance. It's not that their zoom quality is bad, but other mid-range devices which are much more affordable are getting very close in quality. And actually, the Galaxy S25 FE itself would offer a zoom that is quite similar, and it's a significantly cheaper device. When it comes to backlit scenarios, it's important to note that the preview is now much more optimized, so you won't notice overexposure, and the results will be adequate. Even though they might be a bit overexposed for my personal taste, just keep that in mind. Particularly in the ultra-wide camera, we notice more overexposure. This results in the colors appearing somewhat paler, especially in the brighter sections. As for the main camera, I believe it shows improvement in that aspect. The telephoto camera, however, is the one I appreciated the most in terms of how it interprets these backlit areas. It manages to depict the shadow areas as actual shadow areas, while the highlights appear more illuminated. Overall, I believe the work done by these cameras in backlit conditions is quite positive. Where I have not been pleased at all with the performance of these cameras is in indoor scenarios. In this particular case, it was an environment with slightly warmer lighting, and the photographs appear with colors that are far too pale in each of the settings. Honestly, while it might seem like a good photograph at first glance, if you were actually there, you would realize that it is a poor photograph due to the color rendition. Allow me to show you how it could look better, because the device has significantly reduced the color saturation. Additionally, we needed a bit more warmth. I feel that this version is closer to what we are actually seeing in the real view, and notice how the colors appear too pale. Thus, indoors, I believe this device doesn't capture very nice pictures. Yes, you could correct it with some editing, but I am not fond of the automatic result. However, when discussing the level of detail achieved in these kinds of scenarios, even when indoors, it's worth noting that it's a good experience overall. However, at the maximum digital zoom, it's not as impressive anymore. But keep in mind that if we aim to find images with great detail and well-managed noise levels, then what's necessary to enhance is the white balance. Also at night, the cameras require improvements. In this scenario, note that if there is any lighting within the frame of your photograph, it tends to come out overexposed. This is unlike some other, even much cheaper devices that handle this aspect better. You will also observe that with the ultra-wide camera, there is an excessive amount of grain present in the darker regions. When you activate the night mode, it has the potential to slightly enhance the performance, offering a better exposure of the brighter areas. Additionally, it manages the graininess in the darker areas more effectively, although it does not automatically activate in these kinds of situations. The main camera exhibits a very similar behavior, and in fact you will notice that in the darkest areas, it tends to impart a subtle blue pigmentation displaying. That has some difficulty in achieving good results at night. Once again, if you use the night mode, the outcome can improve significantly. However, for some reason, when there is a light source visible in the frame, even during nighttime, Samsung does not automatically activate the night mode, so you must enable it manually. It's important to note that even when zooming in, we observe a very similar result without night mode, showing more grain, and with night mode, this situation is managed somewhat better. If you try to apply a little more zoom, it seems to me that it still gives good results, although at maximum zoom, it seems that it comes to suffer much more, balancing lights and shadows. The curious thing is that it also allows you to use night mode in this kind of scenarios applying zoom. On the other hand, if there is no light source present in the frame, if you automatically enable night mode and observe the ultra-wide camera, gives a very positive result. with good color saturation and even. We are going to notice an interesting detail specifically for the Plus model. It's important to remember that the ultra-wide camera on the base model has a certain drawback. Interestingly, when you use the main camera, you might observe a slightly altered tonality, especially in scenarios with warm lighting. Additionally, we are also going to notice some artifacts in the darker areas, which are not very nice. So once again, you would need to edit the photo a bit to achieve a more realistic and appealing result. Observe the difference here, and if you begin to apply a bit of zoom, it still keeps that warm tonality. I really love how it maintains a very good level of detail, which is something quite uncommon in night scenarios. In this regard, you can notice that it is indeed a high-end device, because even when applying zoom, we still get a good experience, unlike what you would see with mid-range devices. In scenarios involving movement, take note that all cameras are going to perform well, although when you find yourself in the zone of, shadows are probably going to encounter a bit more difficulty when attempting to define movements accurately. Particularly, the telephoto camera is the one that will face the most challenges. In these kinds of dynamic environments, it won't be able to provide a satisfactory experience and will generally produce sweeping results. However, in environments that are well lit, it can deliver a good performance. The main camera is equipped with a high-resolution sensor, which you can take advantage of in a special mode, and you'll notice that. If the result is a well-detailed picture, then the experience is quite good. However, for macro photography, it isn't the best option. Note that this is as close as you can get with the main camera. Remember, the ultra-wide camera lacks autofocus, and the telephoto camera doesn't have macro capabilities, so the truth in this regard is quite limited. You can still attempt to zoom in 2 times digitally to capture good detail on these tiny objects, and you will achieve it. I believe you will indeed get it. Who is not an expert here. However, if you prefer shots that are very distant instead of very close ones, keep in mind that this is the ultra-wide camera. Samsung also provides the option to use the ultra-wide camera in the panoramic mode, which allows you to capture very wide pictures. These pictures not only offer us great resolution, but you can also zoom in and still see good details. The dynamic range of the panoramic photos is not particularly high, so you might notice some areas that are overexposed or some very noticeable shadows depending on the environment where you take the picture, but overall, we assess it as positive. Lastly, for portrait photography, it also performs well. Note that this is the result with the main camera. It appears to detect the foreground quite well, though it doesn't maintain 100% accuracy as some elements appeared out of focus when they should have been focused. This isn't excessively serious because if it was a scenario that was very complex, it also enables you to capture photos with a slightly greater zoom in this portrait mode, allowing for more professional perspectives, and in all of them, the performance remains consistent. The blur effect will be correct, although the edge detection of the foreground doesn't always stay 100% accurate. Thus, I would say it isn't a portrait expert. Interestingly, when using the telephoto camera, you'll observe that the detection improves, so it's recommended to take portrait shots with this camera. The telephoto camera offers a more professional perspective. Now, let's explore additional examples of these portrait shots to better understand how effectively it detects edges. At various focal lengths, it consistently maintains a high level of detail. I found the experience to be quite positive overall. However, it also varies depending on the scenario you are in. There are instances when the blur effect might appear even more professional, and this largely depends on the framing you choose to apply. However, overall, it performs quite well for portrait photography, even though I wouldn't label it as a professional level expert. When it comes to video recording, we can achieve 8K at 30 frames per second as the highest quality, but this is limited to the main camera only. The other cameras, while lacking some of these capabilities, still offer impressive performance by supporting up to 4K at 60 frames per second, and this includes the front camera as well. They definitely exhibit excellent compatibility. In this generation, Samsung has enabled HDR video recording as the default setting, which provides you with superior quality across various areas. It's important to note that when recording video, we have a quick setting that allows us to manipulate the zoom using direct shortcuts to different focal lengths. Additionally, there is a small button that appears, allowing us to change the zoom style. This feature makes it much easier, smoother, and more comfortable to zoom in. Straightforward. I really appreciate that Samsung gives the user the option to select the setting they prefer. If you desire a much quicker and more dynamic zoom setting that changes with just one touch, or if you prefer a smoother transition, you can choose that. Alternatively, you can opt for a slightly faster change using a single simple slider. You'll also see that a button will appear allowing you to take pictures. Additionally, there are options to pause and resume your video recording, and even to toggle the flashlight on or off. In this generation, it is now available when you're using the ultra-wide camera. Additionally, you can press the button to switch to the front camera without interrupting the video, which means it offers excellent interface capabilities. Moreover, you can tap on the screen to adjust the exposure or focus if you're using a compatible camera. However, for further adjustments, please note that there is also the Pro Video mode where we can adjust the ISO and many other parameters, color rendition and the image quality. Additionally, we will also have log recording available for later coloring, which is great if you prefer a more professional touch. Interestingly, the same device provides an option to interpret colors in the gallery, a feature not commonly found in other devices. It's important to note that by default the video appears pale due to the extensive color information it contains. So if you prefer to interpret the color right here, you will notice that the color correct button appears, and that's it. However, the best practice when recording in log is to manually interpret the color using specialized software like DaVinci Resolve or similar programs. In the Pro mode of video recording, you will see that the overexposure monitor also appears. Additionally, we have the audio control here, allowing you to choose between omnidirectional audio or front and rear audio options. I also appreciate that the device uses the correct microphone. We will also find the capability to monitor audio from accessories or use Samsung headphones via Bluetooth as wireless microphones, and even mix between the headset microphone and the device's microphones. It offers us very advanced options, and within the resolution settings, it notes that we can set 4K at 60 frames per second or even Full HD at 120 frames per second using the ultra-wide camera or the main camera. This means you have excellent tools at your disposal when recording videos at a more professional level. In fact, if you go into the settings, you can access the advanced video options where you can select the codec and choose if you prefer higher bitrate videos. This will provide you with better quality, although it would also make the files larger. However, I appreciate that all these options are readily available for use. You have the option to enable or disable HDR and log as you become aware, and you can also turn on a 360 sound recording feature if you're using Galaxy Buds for a more immersive audio experience. Additionally, it lets you continue playing audio while recording, which is perfect for anyone planning to create content for platforms like TikTok or something similar, where playing audio during recording is necessary. Previously, sound playback stopped completely, but now you can keep other apps playing in the background while recording. It offers advanced options like automatic framing, which keeps a person always framed. If you don't have someone to record you, use the ultra-wide camera and a tripod. Notice that without moving, the phone automatically attempts to keep you centered in the scene. The movement seems a bit slow. I'd prefer a quicker reaction or a speed adjustment, but that's not available. Is this an example of how a video would look in K? The advantage is what? Well, you can zoom in on the content while maintaining good detail. So this is for a more professional use if you want to adjust the framing later. The advantage is that this device already supports this ultra high resolution recording mode. Right now you are seeing an example of what the video looks like with 60 frames per second in 4K as well. So you can more or less get an idea of the quality it could achieve. You can record in the same quality with any of the 3 rear cameras without any problems. It is recommended to record in 4K at 30 frames per second, and it must be noted that in this case, the videos by default are recorded in the following way. In an HDR format, meaning you're actually watching the video converted to SDR. To view the video in HDR, you need a special monitor, and I would have to edit the video in HDR. So, as I mentioned, you're watching a converted video. The video looks fantastic. It's a high-quality video recording device. Notice that even when switching from the ultra-wide camera to the main camera, there wasn't a significant change in color, exposure, or other aspects. Let's talk about the details. Samsung has really put a lot of effort and attention into these devices. Even when you switch to the telephoto camera, you'll notice that the performance remains consistent. There's practically no noticeable change between one camera and the other, providing a much more consistent and seamless experience. When it comes to recording video in indoor scenarios, we also observe a strong performance. Interestingly, it seems to interpret color better in video than in still images, which means we didn't encounter too many drawbacks in this area. We have utilized the ultra-wide camera, the main camera, and the telephoto camera. However, there are instances where the white balance might become confused, which can result in the colors appearing a bit paler. I'd like to remind you that in this particular case, we are discussing a slightly warmer light environment, yet at times it shifts to a colder tone, causing the white balance to be less stable. It is advisable to record using the professional mode in such environments to ensure a fixed white balance. In backlit conditions, the outcome is entirely positive. In this particular scenario, I must emphasize that the video you're currently watching is being converted. However, when you view the original video on a compatible monitor, trust me, you will enjoy it even more due to the excellent balance it strikes between highlights and shadows. There are no overly aggressive transitions in the exposure, and it maintains the colors of the most illuminated areas exceptionally well without reaching overexposed positions. And therefore, the result is thoroughly enjoyable and pleasant. And similarly, the same thing happens when switching to the main camera and also to the telephoto camera. Although at times, if it stops detecting the face, it might darken the shadow area a bit more. However, once it detects the face again, it tries to compensate by slightly adjusting the lighting. Curiously, I find the result to be even more appealing when HDR is turned off. In this case, we notice that the shadow area is compensated a bit better. And it doesn't appear as dark, even when you switch to the telephoto camera. Then, interestingly, the backlit performance appears better to me when HDR is turned off. However, this will likely depend on other specific scenes. At night, you should note that in the ultra-wide camera, the noise is well controlled. Although, you can notice it is somewhat challenging to achieve a good light input, I think it does a decent enough job. And I wouldn't say it's the best ultra-wide camera available on the market, but generally these types of cameras tend to struggle at night, and this one is no exception. However, I believe it somewhat salvages its outcome. When you switch to the main camera, you will observe much more specific details, and if there are any illuminated areas within the frame, now they might not be exposed as accurately, yet even in the darkest scenes, you can see that there is sufficient light entering. Now, when you switch over to the telephoto camera, you will notice the performance becomes a bit more straightforward, significantly darkening the areas lacking illumination. Additionally, there is a bit more noise present than at other times. It appears to have some level of self-control, but I don't believe it excels in recording during nighttime conditions. When it comes to stabilization, it performs quite well with the ultra-wide camera, as it's typically easier to manage the movements with this lens. Even while running, I find it does a commendable job, though it's not flawless, and during particularly intense movements, you will observe that compensatory motion. Even when sprinting at top speed, you will notice that the movements are extremely aggressive, but for more subtle movements, it can be acceptable. With the main camera, we are likely to observe nearly identical performance when you're walking and in those subtle movements, and I believe it compensates quite effectively to have excellent stabilization. When you start running, you may notice these compensation movements slightly more depending on how steadily you can hold the device. However, overall, I think it performs well in these types of scenarios. Even when using the telephoto camera as you walk around, you will notice that it still manages to achieve good stabilization. However, keep in mind that it also features a super stable mode. Although the resolution drops to K, meaning we do not have full K, it is important to note that even when running, it stabilizes much better in scenes with a lot of action. Therefore, it is highly recommended to use this mode. The compensation movements are not as aggressive, and overall the result looks really good with the ultra-wide camera. Interestingly, it also allows you to utilize the super stable mode with the main camera, and once again, we achieve a really good result whether walking or running. However, when running, I believe it is still more advisable to use the ultra-wide camera. This is because with the main camera, you can notice certain vibrations. But as I mentioned with the ultra-wide camera, that issue is resolved. Although I must remind you that, at least in the unit I have, the ultra-wide camera is out of focus, or something similar to that. So when you're using the base Model S, you will observe that this ultra-wide camera with the super stable mode provides us with a very low level of detail. I hope it's only an issue with my unit, but please let me know in the comments if you also experience this detail. This device is equipped with a mode that allows you to zoom in very smoothly, and I was already expecting that the transition between one camera and another is not perceived as abrupt. Of course, the change in the level of detail is noticeable, but I appreciate that it is not. The telephoto camera, even though it lacks the capabilities to perceive such drastic changes in coloration, exposure, and other details, still performs well. I believe the zoom in general is a positive feature due to its excellent stabilization, allowing for smooth operation. Of course, at the maximum zoom level, we won't find an incredibly high level of detail, as the telephoto lens is only 3 times optical zoom. Beyond that, we rely solely on digital zoom. Interestingly, it does a surprisingly good job, especially considering it only has a 10 megapixel sensor. In the telephoto camera, I would like to remind you that the ultra-wide camera lacks autofocus capability, which means we won't have a macro function or anything similar for video. However, the main camera can focus from close distances and does so quite well. The focus might be a bit slow, but this also provides a bit more stability. It really depends on your preference when recording. For subtle movements, I believe it is managed quite well, and the telephoto camera, even though it doesn't have those capabilities. The macro feature allows you to focus extremely close, and I believe its focus is sufficiently close to provide high-quality video and capture specific details effectively. Additionally, this device incorporates a fast camera mode capable of recording in K. Its basic speed starts at X, which results in smooth recordings of people in motion. However, it doesn't achieve the high speeds we've observed in other devices that reach up to 960 times or even higher, like some Samsung models. Nonetheless, it still delivers impressive performance. It has a more restricted speed, which means you won't achieve such remarkable results in time-lapse of landscapes. Fortunately, this version now supports recording in 4K at 120 frames per second, a feature that was previously exclusive to the Ultra model. This allows you to enjoy high-quality slow-motion video that delivers stunning results. Additionally, it can record even slower at up to 240 frames per second, but this is limited to full HD resolution, so you won't have quite the same level of detail. And finally, another feature that this device offers in its rear recording capabilities is the portrait video mode. It's important to note that this can be done in 4K resolution, a feature that no other brand's device in the Android world currently allows. You'll notice that even when my face is not detected, the blur effect is maintained. However, there is room for improvement, as when I move away from the scene, you can see that the blur effect doesn't reduce significantly, which leads to a somewhat inconsistent result. It's natural if you are far away, although of course the ideal situation is to record these types of elements close up. Note that the objects will remain in focus only if it detects you are very close to them or if it senses you are holding them, so it's not 100% accurate when objects are present. That's another area for improvement. However, I really love that it can provide us with this effect in 4K resolution. It is advisable to record in areas without objects. Although it allows zooming, it's not optical zoom, so there's a telephoto perspective. Yet, it provides a detail level similar to Full HD. Honestly, this isn't bad when compared to the portrait recording mode of many other devices, but there's always room for improvement. Here's an example of how the result would appear when recording with the front camera in 4K at 60 frames per second. The outcome is absolutely spectacular. It is quite possibly one of the very best Android devices you could use for recording with the front camera. Now, take a look at the result in 8K resolution at 30 frames per second. This camera is also capable of recording in HDR, so what you are watching is the video converted to SDR. The quality, in my opinion, is exceptionally good when it comes to lighting, color, stabilization, and the level of detail. Even in backlit scenes, it performs positively in these kinds of outdoor scenarios. Therefore, I must insist it is probably among the best cameras available. The front camera is used for recording video in the Android world. Additionally, it features autofocus, allowing you to approach an object closely, and it will remain in focus to present it clearly to your audience. This makes it a great option for content creators. Take a look at the indoor results. In this case, it offers good color rendition. Although it appears slightly grainy in darker areas, it still performs well even in backlit conditions. Inside, it is not as spectacular, yet he observes that it attempts to compensate for this. Unfortunately, it doesn't achieve perfection, but it certainly tries very hard and does a good job. Ultimately, at night, he notes that the result will be positive regarding the color it achieves. However, in this situation, there are some areas with increased noise and grain, which becomes slightly more noticeable with movement. So personally, I must say that I am not particularly fond of the result, especially when it comes to the noise that it tends to produce, particularly in the darker areas. While it is understandable given the complexity of the scenario, it is evident that there is substantial room for improvement in this area for future generations. I want to emphasize that it is not a poor result by any means. In fact, it performs quite admirably, arguably the best we've encountered so far. However, I do feel that this is an area where we are witnessing minimal progress compared to previous generations. Here in the front camera, we will also find the fast camera mode available in 4K. It offers the same performance and configuration that we observed in the rear camera. And of course, we will also find slow motion available here in the front camera. However, it will be a basic slow motion in full HD at 120 frames per second. So do not expect something with too much quality as we have seen in the rear camera. We will additionally discover the portrait recording mode for the front camera, and honestly, I was quite impressed by the outcome. It appears very natural. Of course, there will be instances where you can tell that the blur is not real, particularly when there is an object close by. This is an area where they still need to enhance its performance. However, I appreciate that at certain times it manages to maintain focus on these objects effectively. The color remains excellent. It's an HDR video even with the portrait effect. The result, as I mentioned, is fantastic, and the best part is that it's in 4K. Additionally, it includes a dual camera recording mode, allowing you to display both the rear and front cameras. Notably, it can be in 4K, and this small box with rounded corners can be moved anywhere you like, and you can switch between cameras. In fact, you'll see it as focus enabled, but using the ultra-wide camera, we can switch cameras without stopping and restarting the recording. Now, with the main camera, focusing up close is possible, yet zoom isn't enabled. To switch to the telephoto camera, you have to stop and start recording again. So, it's a bit of practical, though it has strengths with the telephoto camera. You can zoom further or switch back. Positives include 4K resolution and moving the frame with nice animation and rounded corners. Hopefully, an update will allow zooming while recording in this mode. Regarding the software, it is clear that these two devices will be identical, providing us with One UI 7 alongside Android 15. They promise us 7 years of software updates in addition to 7 years of security patches, ensuring these devices will have a very long lifespan. It is evident that they will also provide us with numerous features to their software. As I have mentioned numerous times before, I believe One UI is the most comprehensive system in the smartphone world, offering a wide range of functions that will enable us to utilize the most advanced software available. There are several advanced features that are unique and not found on other phones. For instance, modes and routines allow you to automate multiple settings on your phone with just one touch. You can activate these modes using your watch or other accessories, or even by starting a game, among other options. What's even more advanced are the routines. With routines, you can set specific conditions that will trigger a complex series of actions, making your phone experience highly personalized and efficient. So, there are numerous conditions that you have the ability to use, as well as a wide variety of conditions to entirely modify the configuration of your phone according to your personal preferences. Honestly, in this regard, the experience is quite excellent when you aim to automate several tasks on your phone. If you observe that there are settings you frequently adjust on a daily basis, you could develop a routine to automate those tasks, thereby simplifying the user's life significantly. In fact, here as well, you will find a variety of routines that Samsung has already predefined for you. These are available in case you want to explore them and take advantage of some of their features. Additionally, we will come across other tools like the Edge panels. Interestingly, in this case, they no longer support the insertion of additional third-party panels, which was a feature seen in previous generations. This means that access to the Galaxy Store for such additions is no longer available. You must utilize the panels that are available, which can still be quite useful. Note that you have direct access to any app you desire right here at your fingertips. Remember, a single tap will open the app in full size. However, if you drag apps to the center, they will open in a floating window mode. And if you drag apps up or down, you can easily split the screen. Obviously, you can reassign the size you allocate to each of these apps. Additionally, you can transform these apps back into floating screen apps by simply holding down on this small button. So the truth is that the interaction you experience in this view of apps through the Edge panels is really quite good. Also, remember that you can open up to 5 apps in this floating mode, although interestingly, they do not change their scale. Even if you make the window smaller, you will still see all the content at the same size. However, if you download Good Lock along with some of its modules, you could enhance this experience so that the content becomes smaller as the window size decreases. Remember, all applications support this floating window mode, so in that regard, we encounter no limitations. You can enable that feature in the Samsung Labs section, although interestingly, this generation also has it available. We have now turned off transparency on Windows, a feature that was available in previous generations. However, you can still modify the view style to always keep the controls visible or to make them a bit more concealed. Additionally, keep in mind that these apps in split screen stay linked in the recent apps list, and you can even create a shortcut on your home screen if you frequently use 2 apps together simultaneously. Regarding notifications, it's important to note that the device offers us an easy way to manage each notification individually. It also presents a style that's different from the traditional one offered by Android. We have the option to customize an animation that will encompass the screen. It's worth mentioning that this animation can be of various colors or even include some additional visual effects within the notification section. In fact, we have the option to select a manual color setting as well. By default, it will automatically adjust the color based on the application's color. However, we have the ability to customize this further by deciding how transparent we want it to be and determining the duration for which we want this effect to last. It's important to note that this is not just a customization at an aesthetic level. For instance, when we receive a message, we will have the capability to slide down this notification, which will allow us to open the application in a floating window format. The app is available for free, allowing you to respond easily without needing to leave the application you are currently using. Furthermore, it has an attractive appearance, particularly when your screen is off. Speaking of the screen being off, I want to remind you that this device includes always on display with a full screen format. By default, it shows up when you tap the screen, but you can also set it to always function this way. You'll notice that your wallpaper will appear dimmed. However, it will constantly provide you with a bit more information, even though this might use up a lot of battery. But there's a choice available if you prefer to always have a peek at your background image. Nevertheless, aside from this full screen feature, we will also discover the charging options for always on display within the Samsung store. Here you can find a variety of content, some of which are free while others are paid. All of them note that we are going to put a cover for always on display, which can be different. Let's say it has the basic format and also the full screen format. In the theme center, we will also find complete themes that entirely change the aesthetics of our device. This includes modifying the icons, the wallpaper, and many other things. So if you really enjoy customizing your phone, you will find very good options integrated into the system here, offering a wide variety of choices to suit your personal style and preferences. Unfortunately, the lock screen is not going to provide us with such a high degree of customization by default. It's important to note that it only allows us to change the background to one of our own choosing. Moreover, we have the option to alter the clock style slightly and add some extra elements, such as weather or date indicators. Additionally, we can customize the typography and the color of the clock as well. Also, please note that it's going to enable us to integrate various battery status indicator widgets, not only for this device, but also for other devices within the Galaxy ecosystem. It includes additional indicators as well, so it provides excellent options in terms of quick glance functionalities. However, where we do not find something as sophisticated is in the generation of wallpapers. In other brands, we observe something significantly better. Although it does mention that yes, it would have the capability to scan your image slightly to detect. The depth of customization and application of these effects is noteworthy. You can adjust the frame to match different styles, which is a nice feature. However, in my opinion, they don't quite reach the level of sophistication that we observe in some other brands. While the customization options are decent, they don't quite stand out as the main feature of this device. Nevertheless, it does allow you to apply various effects such as color adjustments or blur, among others. Naturally, you can also select your own image. I'll choose one at random to give you an idea of how it works. However, notice that in certain pictures, it struggles to accurately scan depth, unlike other devices. By the way, within the wallpapers, there's an option to dynamically change the lock screen, in case you'd like to see a different image each time you attempt to unlock your phone. Personally, I dislike this feature, but fortunately, it comes disabled by default here. By the way, when it comes to the home screen, it's worth mentioning that we now have additional options available for you. You can adjust the size in which the app icons are displayed, giving you more flexibility in how your screen looks. Furthermore, there's also the ability to disable text labels on both widgets and apps. This can help you achieve a cleaner and more streamlined interface should you prefer that kind of look. It's a nice touch for those who want a tidier appearance, like this. And of course, one of the standout features is the Now bar. It's now conveniently placed right here on the lock screen, making it more accessible and easier to use. This small bar provides access to real-time information and special phone functions. For instance, if there's a soccer game you want to follow, you can easily search for it on Google. Just press the follow button to inform Google that the team interests you. So, if you enjoy tracking your favorite team's score as it happens, you can conveniently add it here in Google Sports. This little feature will keep you updated on the latest scores. With Capsule, you'll be able to view the scoreboard in real time. Combined with always on display, I believe it provides a great appearance. Additionally, you could receive suggestions from Google Maps or Samsung Health in general. Samsung has opened the API, allowing other developers to utilize this Now bar. Although I haven't seen many compatible apps yet, it's expected that more will gradually become available over time. Notice how in this instance I performed a search for a match that takes place in real time, and there it is displayed. Although they aren't popular teams, which is why their shields aren't even shown, but later on that information will be visible. If you have a timer running or you're using the voice recorder, information will also appear here. It is anticipated that apps like cabs or food delivery services might also display certain progress here. Hopefully, developers will make use of these options. Additionally, when you're playing music, you should notice that the Neo bar will provide you with access to these controls. If you click on another area, it can display the cover and offer you even more options. In fact, if you have multiple items, you'll notice that you can scroll to switch between each of them. It's important to observe that in this generation, we will also find access to the player within the list of quick settings, which are completely new. In fact, we have the option to change the order of these quick settings by selecting the edit button, allowing us to rearrange the placement of each one. Additionally, note that by holding down on any of these items, you can access more detailed editing options. In some instances, this can be done directly from this panel, while in other cases, it redirects you to its specific application. Overall, I believe these settings are quite effective. You have the ability to scroll from left to right in order to access notifications or the quick control center. In the lab section, we're going to discover experimental features such as forcing multiple app view for all apps, and we also have an option for suggested replies. This feature, when used together with the keyboard, will allow you to notice that it can provide suggestions for replying to certain messages. For instance, let's open WhatsApp and observe that if I receive a message, it immediately presents the option that it's possible to producing responses to artificial intelligence based on the message I just got, and the responses are quite adequate. Therefore, it can serve as a useful tool if you suddenly want to save some time or if you're uncertain about how to respond more easily. It's possible that this feature will be integrated into Galaxy later on, but currently, they manage it as a separate section within the experimental features section. Interestingly, we are also going to find Bixby as the voice assistant here, but remember, if you press and hold the button, Gemini opens by default. However, you can change this behavior in the settings if you prefer to use Bixby or Gemini, or if you just want the shutdown menu to appear. But of course, Samsung's own assistant, Bixby, also has good capabilities, even though it doesn't yet have much generative artificial intelligence, as we encounter them in Gemini. Additionally, we will find certain gestures that enable us to activate the device when we pick it up or double tap to either turn off or turn on the screen, along with similar functionalities. Personally, I am not fond of the screenshot gesture because it requires sliding your hand over the screen, which is different from most cell phones where you can perform that action with just 3 fingers. Of course, you can also use the key combination for these captures, but using one hand to slide 3 fingers is more convenient. Fingers down. And since we're discussing a single hand, keep in mind that it also includes this special mode that lets us reduce the screen size, doing so in an excellent manner. It not only allows you to resize, but also to adjust the position to the left or right, even altering the position on the vertical axis. Additionally, it enables you to resize this small window, making it just perfect. Interestingly, this device offers the ability to customize the way you want your screenshots or recordings to be saved. Moreover, it allows you to configure the front camera to appear as if you're creating a video tutorial or something similar. Additionally, it includes a feature called Video Effects, which notably applies to platforms like Google Meet, Gmail, YouTube, Instagram, WhatsApp, and even extends to Microsoft Teams and Zoom. For instance, if you're on a video call, you can scroll to the quick settings. Besides changing your microphone mode, you can load video effects that rely on your device, not the app. For example, you might disable the background blur or choose a solid color if that's your preference. Alternatively, you can select any image from your gallery to set as your background. The account offers excellent options for working with video calls. In fact, it allows you to apply a gentle effect on the skin to slightly blur wrinkles or dark circles. Additionally, you can adjust to a cooler or warmer tone depending on the lighting in your environment and even modify the brightness level. It also features an automatic framing function. However, this function does not operate alongside the background change, but in this instance, it utilizes the same. The camera will always keep you centered in the image even if you move around. Lastly, the reactions are enabled. You can just press any emoji and that animation will be sent to your contacts. This works even if they're using a different brand or any other video calling app, and it functions smoothly. Also, note that these can be activated with simple gestures, so there's no need to manually press the buttons. Personally, I would really like to have the option to mount the Galaxy avatar. This is the next option I'm about to show you. With this feature, you can create your own character, synchronize it with your Samsung account, and use it across multiple devices. In this case, it obviously allows you to customize not only the physical appearance of the face, but also the clothes and everything else. Honestly, it offers a wide range of customization options. It even includes a clothing store, so you have the ability to personalize not just your character, but also the clothes and everything else associated with it. Offers free options, as well as paid options for customizing all of these characters. Clearly, it provides a decent amount of free elements. However, I emphasize that if you're looking for something more advanced, you can still customize it further. It would be fantastic if it allowed us to use the avatar's face during video calls, but unfortunately, that feature isn't available. As you can see, we can utilize it, but only as a standalone application, not for video calls. And here, I'm just writing on some example characters. However, we could also place our own character in the Samsung gallery. It also allows us to hold down on certain items to crop them. Take note that we can even switch applications and then release it, so we could transfer it to other applications to send them when we release it. And although in WhatsApp, it is not detected as a sticker, which I would like to see perfected. But if you choose by, for example, consider the option to copy something on Instagram while you're writing a story. If you could paste it and then move it around to any position you like, it would provide you with great convenience. I also want to remind you about the addition of Samsung members, which is going to be an app where Samsung offers benefits just for being a Galaxy user. You'll have access to a variety of promotions, not only with Samsung itself, but also with various restaurants, clothing stores, bookstores, food stores, and a lot more. It's undoubtedly a significant benefit that highlights part of Samsung's partnerships. Now, let's discuss artificial intelligence as it is integrated with the entire Galaxy full suite. This suite observes and enables us to have translation during our calls, not just calls made from the phone, but also from other applications. We also have the typing assistant to compose various styles directly on the keyboard, along with translation and interpretation functions through the Galaxy bots as a whole, and using the cell phone. Additionally, there is a notes assistant available that allows you to write and create various styles. A transcription assistant is also there to convert your voice recordings into text, and it can create summaries, which is particularly useful for meetings on web browsers. Furthermore, we provide artificial intelligence that can swiftly summarize articles you're reading or even read them aloud for you. And of course, when it comes to photographs, there are numerous tools available to generate images with simple strokes or edit the images to remove objects. You have the ability to change their position or even make them larger. Additionally, you can draw over the images to incorporate some elements. Overall, the drawing assistant performs quite well. Furthermore, in this generation, we have the audio eraser, which enables us to edit our audio mix by detecting people's voices, ambient noise, background music, and more. This allows us to adjust the entire volume of those audio elements. Moreover, we also have the option of transforming our wallpapers too. We'll also have the ability to use the Now Brief feature, which will provide you with a variety of content suggestions in the morning, afternoon, and evening. The more frequently you use your cell phone, the smoother it can become for you. And lastly, there are the health options. What I appreciate about Samsung is that it offers the option to process data solely on the device itself. So if you prefer not to have the content uploaded to the cloud, you can activate this specific option. And anyway, the device offers a wide range of options without needing to be connected to the internet. This feature provides you with enhanced privacy and helps save your mobile data, especially if you want to use these options when Wi-Fi isn't available. You can enjoy all the options seamlessly. Also note that, for instance, in Samsung Notes, you can import a PDF regardless of its length or if it's in another language. Furthermore, with the help of artificial intelligence, we can summarize that PDF for you. You can easily select the maximum amount of text, which, by the way, isn't very extensive, and then click on the option to generate a summary. This feature can be quite useful for studying purposes. Also, take note that on the keyboard you can press the emoji option and then the Galaxy button to describe an emoji and generate it. There are various categories of emojis you can choose from, and after generating it, you need to wait a few seconds before you can send it. Just observe, you simply need to click done and you're all set. It can be sent as a sticker. In this case, it does support WhatsApp stickers. And note that also in the gallery we will find an option to search for images with artificial intelligence. In this case, I did some tests and, for example, looking for armchair pictures where there is an armchair appear. Let's look, for example, wall to see if something appears, and as you realize, there appear the pictures where there are walls. Then it may be an easier way to find your pictures too. Photographs. Now let's discuss security. I want to remind you that this device, just like the Plus model, is equipped with an ultrasonic fingerprint reader. This means it doesn't require intense light for recognition. It can even recognize fingerprints if they are slightly wet, and it operates much faster than optical readers. This is exactly what you would expect from a high-end device. It comes with a recognition profile, though it's important to mention that it only supports up to 4 registrations, when most devices generally allow a maximum of 5 enrollments. Perhaps Samsung does this to enhance accuracy and speed. Personally, I appreciate having the option for 5 enrollments. It is up to you as the user to decide how many trusted people you want to enroll or how many of your own fingerprints. Moreover, besides that, we also have facial recognition available. However, you should know that it is not in 3 dimensions, so it is not as advanced. Nevertheless, Samsung has been working on improving the recognition over time then. It's important to note that now it also requests you to slightly turn your head to capture your face from various angles. It even detects if you are wearing glasses, allowing you to register both with and without them. This makes it one of the most advanced 2-dimensional facial recognition systems available in the industry. However, it's still not quite at the level of 3-dimensional recognition like what you would find on the iPhone. But keep in mind that the iPhone lacks a fingerprint reader, so ultimately the choice should be yours as the user, what you prefer. The truth of the matter is that the fingerprint reader is convenient. In addition, Samsung adds some other tools such as Samsung Wallet, which has now absorbed Samsung Pass, where you could collect passwords. So through this application, you can access by your fingerprint all your passwords. So now through this application will be where you can access all your passwords and secure notes, plus some other cards and more. Although in Mexico, you can't access all your passwords and secure notes. You can add credit or debit cards, and hopefully in the future, they will allow more options. But for now, let's talk about security. It's important to note that this is where you can store your passwords, card details, addresses, or any confidential notes. All of these can be added easily through the keyboard by simply going to this section. Interestingly, it still mentions Samsung Pass, even though it has been absorbed by Wallet. Nevertheless, here you can access all these categories. So, with just one touch, you can insert all this private information. This is, of course, in addition to the login details that are also safeguarded by your fingerprint through this tool. For those who are not very experienced users, there is also a feature known as the automatic blocker. This will restrict several aspects that are generally a bit more accessible on Android and could potentially lead to more vulnerabilities. Therefore, with a single touch, you can protect yourself and shield yourself from a variety of things. By default, the maximum protection is turned off, but the basic protection level is active. If you're a more advanced user, you might need to turn off these settings to have deeper control over your phone. However, I appreciate that it comes secured to minimize risks. Keep in mind that Samsung provides this protection level using Knox, Matrix, and several other mechanisms, employing both hardware and software, to safeguard the device from any potential attack. Samsung additionally includes the secure Wi-Fi feature, which acts as a private VPN that is particularly useful when connecting to public Wi-Fi networks. This ensures your data travels encrypted. They offer you 1 GB per month for free, but you have the option to upgrade for more extended protection. Furthermore, you will discover the traditional secure folder, allowing you to store apps, files, and anything else you wish to keep private. Keep in mind that the secure folder gets created as a shortcut on your home screen. If you log out without locking your device, you can log back in without needing verification. Alternatively, you can tap to lock the folder, prompting it to require verification again. Additionally, you have the option to customize the icon on the home screen, allowing you to change its name, color, and other features. Furthermore, if you want, you could also remove it from the home screen in case you would rather have it not visible there anymore. To access it, you can add it to the quick settings list. This way, it's re-enabled, and when activated, it appears on the home screen. But if disabled, it won't be available. Samsung also offers data encryption options for backups and syncing with the Samsung Cloud. If you use Samsung's web browser, you'll notice tracking prevention and more, offering browsing options too. A more secure web experience is provided. Additionally, if you prefer, you can turn off artificial intelligence features that might use your personal data, all managed through specific switches. Samsung has also incorporated a security feature in partnership with McAfee to scan your device for any kind of malware, which complements Google Play Protect. Moreover, they offer the dual messenger option, allowing you to duplicate certain applications to operate 2 accounts on the same phone. Samsung Kids will be available, though it might be a bit hidden. You can search for it, and here you'll find the shortcut to configure it and add access to your app list. Samsung suggests some kid-optimized apps for download, or you can access this section, always secured by your fingerprint, to add other apps already installed on your device, authorized for the little ones to use. Additionally, there is a suggestion screen that Samsung has enabled by default. However, you can choose to enable or disable it according to your preference. And remember that in the parental controls section, we have the ability to assign a time limit, as well as set a specific hour for going to sleep, or determine which applications can be used at all times and more. Now, all these tools are incredibly useful when lending the device to a little one, and obviously before going out, you should verify. Initially, by footprint. If you happen to lose your phone, you have the protection of both Samsung and Google. It's crucial to enable all available options to ensure maximum protection. Additionally, trying to locate your phone through the Samsung website is an option. There's also a maintenance mode available that locks all data on your phone if you need to send your device for repair temporarily. Additionally, there are digital wellness options and parental controls that are distinct from what Google provides on other Android devices. You also have the ability to categorize your time consumption in various applications. This allows you to set specific usage goals to help prevent phone addiction. Furthermore, you can assign timers to particular applications. There's also a driving monitor feature and even one for when you're walking. All these features are designed to help prevent inconvenient or excessive usage. On your cell phone, there is even a section for parental controls, although this section connects to Google's Family Link. And since I'm bringing up Google, remember that in the description below, I have included a link where you can explore all the additional features that Google provides for Android devices, including this particular cell phone. I should mention that in this case, the Google Files application does not come pre-installed by default, but everything else is available here. Additionally, regarding the battery, we might discover various aspects because naturally these are phones of differing dimensions, so we anticipate the battery to be smaller in one and larger in the other respectively. In the Galaxy S25, the battery capacity is 4000 mAh. In my testing while attempting to download as quickly as possible to the phone, it lasted for 3 hours and 40 minutes. This is obviously a relatively short duration, but given that the battery is 4000 mAh, I believe it makes quite good use of it. We have observed other cell phones with 5000 mAh batteries offering similar durations, so it manages quite well through its software. In fact, when I conducted the test in the background, I noticed that the device efficiently manages the energy of applications running in the background. Therefore, while watching videos in the foreground and having the drainer running in the background, it achieved a duration of 6 hours and 4 minutes. We observed a notable increase, unlike other devices that provide very similar figures in the same conditions, test for both foreground and background, so you must ensure that the software is really smart and manages the power efficiently. I also did another test, leaving the cell phone playing YouTube videos with the screen brightness set to the intermediate level. In 1 hour, it discharged 4%. After 7 hours of playing videos, it still had 64%, and roughly after 17 hours and 45 minutes, it reached a 5% battery level where the brightness is lowered by default. Although you can change this, it's part of the process. The last one discharged much more quickly, so it lasted about 18 hours and 7 minutes from 100% until it completely shut down. While I don't recommend this practice, it's just a reference point for you to understand that it is a device with truly impressive battery life. As a point of reference, consider the Xiaomi 15, which is also a compact phone, and it only managed to reach around 15 hours with the same exact test. This shows Samsung's excellent optimization, even though it's not perfect yet. The battery life of the iPhone 16, for example, which is also a compact cell phone that is very similar in size, managed to reach 19 hours, practically 1 hour more than this cell phone in the same test. So, talking about the battery life, I would say that it is quite good, especially considering that it is a compact phone. Do not expect an excessively high duration, because you could find that in larger phones. However, for such compact phones, the battery life has really surprised me. It is very good. On the other hand, the Plus model boasts a capacity of 4,900 milliamps. This is a slight increase, but it still doesn't reach an exaggerated capacity. In fact, when we attempted to download as quickly as possible, the behavior observed was quite similar, much like the background test. However, in a cell phone of these dimensions, this result is not as astonishing as it was in the smaller device. In fact, this suggests that despite being a large cell phone, it possesses the battery life or autonomy typical of a more compact cell phone. So it isn't a great experience with the S Plus due to its size, yet with the S, the experience is good also because of its size. In the YouTube video playback test, it had a similar duration until it hit 5%. However, I have to mention that this cell phone lasted longer from 5 to 0%, reaching 18 hours and 40 minutes in our test. Again, due to its size, it falls short. Now, regarding the charging power, we will find some differences. The base model only supports 25 watts, nothing more or something, which may not be pleasing, yet it fortunately keeps a high power level for a considerable amount of time. After 15 minutes, it reaches 27%. In 30 minutes, it already surpasses half of its capacity at 55%. The complete charge is finished in about 1 hour and 16 minutes, though it's worth mentioning that the last part of the charge is much slower. The Plus model can handle a 45 watts load, but it shows very similar results. In 15 minutes, it regains 27%, and in 30 minutes, 56%. The full charge is completed in 1 hour and 14 minutes, so they perform quite similarly, even though we observe various features and specifications. Therefore, do not assume that just because it is larger, it will necessarily have a significantly longer battery life. At least not with such a big difference, nor should you expect that because it supports 45 watts charging, it will charge much faster than the base model. They are quite similar in this regard. However, if you look closely at the graph, you'll notice that the Galaxy S Plus behaves somewhat unusually. In the initial phase, it charged very slowly, then experienced a sharp increase, maintaining high power, and in the final stage, it has always charged much slower. In both cases, we see smart charging, allowing slow charging if you plan to leave it overnight, and there's a charging lock to keep them plugged in without battery damage. Remember, they also support wireless charging, though the maximum is 15 watts. To reach 15 watts, magnetic charging is needed for perfect alignment, and there are. To say that in this case, they don't have integrated magnet, so you need a special holster with magnet if you want to take advantage of this feature. In this aspect, I definitely think they need to improve, especially because they compete head-to-head with the iPhone, and the iPhone supports MagSafe. In this case, they support the Qi 2 standard but do not have integrated magnetic charging, so the most they can charge is 15 watts, but I insist. It is very difficult if you do not use a holster with magnet because usually it will charge at 7 watts if you don't have a magnet on. Oh, and I forgot to mention that they also include the normal saving mode and an ultra saving mode. With these, you can extend your device's autonomy a bit more, which we've observed is quite good in the compact model, but not so much in the larger phone. The ultra saving mode allows you to restrict even more functions for emergency situations, making it potentially useful. It's not something you'll use all the time, but when the day comes that you need it, you'll be glad it's there. Both phones offer the same connectivity features, including theoretical Wi-Fi 7. I mention this because even with my Wi-Fi 7 router, I don't see the Wi-Fi 7 icon on either phone. Nonetheless, they support very high download speeds on both mobile data and Wi-Fi. Luckily, there is a software option to lock data, preventing apps from using your mobile data unnecessarily. It also supports eSIM, so on trips, instead of buying a physical SIM card, just get one with an eSIM service. Use a QR code to add this service. It supports Bluetooth 5.4 with stability and range, and NFC for mobile payments at bank terminals. However, Samsung Wallet in Mexico doesn't let us add cars, so we must use Google or other services. Just like any high-end device, it doesn't support FM radio. In this particular case, projection and screen navigation are accomplished through Smart View. So, if you own a Samsung TV, you'll experience a much more advanced interaction. All you need to do is touch your TV and you can project content. However, if you don't have a Samsung TV, there's no need to worry. You can still project content. For instance, you can project a single application while doing other tasks on your cell phone, or even project with the screen turned off. And similar options. It supports wired projection for more stability and includes Samsung DeX, both wired and wireless, allowing you to switch to a different interface and use apps like on a computer. For instance, using a web browser, you can run advanced applications like the web version of Photoshop. By connecting a mouse and Bluetooth keyboard, you essentially have a full-fledged workstation right on your cell phone, provided that the tasks you want to perform can be accessed to the browser, because Android applications haven't reached that level of sophistication yet. However, I really appreciate the capabilities it manages to offer. Additionally, we have Android Auto, and its USB connector is 3.2 Gen 1, which also provides excellent transfer speeds. Lastly, in this section, the sensors are of high quality, including an accelerometer, a geomagnetic field sensor, and an orientation sensor. The gyroscope in this instance also includes a pressure sensor, which is relatively uncommon in smartphones. Additionally, it features a proximity sensor that detects contact, meaning it doesn't sense when it's merely near, but rather when it fully contacts the skin. Fortunately, these are not virtual sensors like those seen in certain other devices, therefore I believe it's quite satisfactory. However, in this case, we do not have infrared sensors, unlike what we find in some other mobile devices. Chinese people prefer using a universal remote control. Samsung places greater emphasis on its SmartThings ecosystem, which we will discuss next. The Samsung ecosystem has consistently proven to be quite robust, and this will not be an exception. It continues to evolve, now incorporating the Galaxy Ring. However, at least in Mexico, I will keep complaining about the fact that they do not officially distribute the Galaxy Book. So, from my perspective, the ecosystem has a significant gap because they lack the Galaxy Book. A laptop that allows them to coexist with complete smoothness at 100%, although naturally they include integration with Windows for somewhat easier connectivity. However, I am curious to see Samsung's unique offering. Otherwise, we will encounter a high level of interaction. For instance, you could copy content on your phone and paste it onto your tablet, or take photos with the watch, along with many other features that enable advanced interactions. For example, also with the Ring, you could easily make this gesture to take pictures, and indeed the interaction is quite impressive. Additionally, Samsung is a company that isn't entirely reliant on Google. They do work closely together, but it's important to remember that Samsung has its very own Galaxy Store. This store often provides more promotions and offers interesting games. Moreover, they have their own health platform known as Samsung Health, which provides an excellent summary of your health status. The Samsung Cloud is a very useful and up-to-date physical device with suggestions and many more things, fully synchronized with its accessories. They also offer Samsung SmartThings, with which you can control your smart home devices, and not only compatible with other Samsung devices, but you can also connect products from other brands, although it is not completely universal. But I like that it is a fairly open application that you could even install on non-Galaxy phones, so it shows a good development. Samsung. Now, when it comes to cloud storage, you have what Google offers, which includes Google Drive providing you with 15 gigabytes. Additionally, the photo gallery is integrated with OneDrive, giving you a small amount of free backup space. Personally, I would prefer if it were Samsung Cloud or a similar service. However, in terms of cloud storage, it is another area where Samsung hasn't invested much effort. Therefore, the ecosystem, even though it is extremely robust and indeed one of its most appealing aspects, I believe it still has room for enhancement. Now let's proceed to the performance test, where we will encounter very similar results, as both devices are equipped with the same Snapdragon 8 Elite 4 Galaxy processor and 12 GB of RAM. Their primary difference lies in storage, although this difference in storage doesn't significantly impact this initial test. And presto, as you can see, it took about 75 seconds to open each of these 16 applications. Samsung has incredibly enhanced the performance of their devices with this One UI 7 update, and it is truly spectacular because the applications open very quickly. Notice how it has eliminated those annoying white screens that were present in previous generations. In this case, furthermore, even though I am testing a cell phone with nearly full storage, you can see that it is still maintaining very smoothly, although obviously the storage is a challenge in this small model, but we'll discuss that in just a moment. For the time being, please note that it continues to perform remarkably well, so now in addition to providing you with powerful hardware, it also comes with excellent software optimization. Also, take note that the processor's power is quite good for various other types of graphics applications that require intense real-time processing. Additionally, when you are scrolling through applications, take note that it performs flawlessly. This means it is a device that truly provides excellent agility, even when you are interacting with many open applications simultaneously. At no point do you notice any sluggishness in the device's behavior. The performance is truly excellent, which is remarkably impressive, especially considering that traditionally this was one of Samsung's weaknesses due to inadequate optimization that the operating system had. However, it seems that from One UI 7, everything feels much smoother without bothersome white screens, and as you can see, everything runs well. Those 12 GB of RAM definitely make a difference, and it still offers an extended RAM option that defaults to 4 GB, but you can extend it to 8 additional. Although personally, I don't like using virtual RAM, but it is an option here. Keep in mind that storage is a weak point in the base model. In this instance, you should note that it becomes practically full after testing it with a variety of videos, several games, photos, and more. It fills up with relative ease, especially due to the games. Therefore, this will be one of the main criticisms of this model, as it is high-end and it is unacceptable to see only 128 gigabytes. Now it is the turn of the Model Plus, and let's also see how long it takes to see if there is any marked difference or not. Although I do not think so, it took 23s in total, slightly faster. Specifically, I think it was because TikTok Talk opened faster than in the base model, although it loaded a photo, maybe it could be a little more justified. In general, both devices are ultra fast. Now let's do the storage speed test on this small model, which has 128 gigabyte, maybe that can influence. We observe decent speed, though it doesn't hit the top peak we've seen in some other high-end devices. In writing speed, we also note good performance compared to other devices, almost reaching 500 megabytes per second. I think that's pretty good. Let's see how it performs in the storage test and its speed, and check if it reaches a maximum peak in this test, although it didn't stay. It's an incredibly fast device, and it appears that it might provide us with a bit more speed than the base model. Even in writing speed, we notice it is significantly faster, reaching over 700 megabytes per second, which is impressive. In this scenario, there will indeed be a difference compared to the base model. Now, let's proceed to the real-life test. Exporting a video in 4K with a total duration of 1 minute, utilizing clips recorded with this cell phone. In this test, we employ the processor and the memory, and even the read and write speed of the storage, making it a useful test to have a general reference. Note that it's already completed and it took about 15 seconds, which is truly excellent regarding power. Now, let's proceed to the Plus model to determine if you can notice the difference in the storage write speed. It's exactly the same test, so let's observe how long it will take this time. It is also a remarkably fast device. As for games, we have the Gaming Hub, where remember that Samsung offers you access to different content without downloading it, which can be especially useful in the base model if you buy the 128 GB because it has little storage space. So with this, you do not consume storage and you entertain yourself a little, although obviously you require internet connection. But if you want, you can also install the heavier games and have them here. You can open them directly in a mode. Stay silent if you prefer. Additionally, we're going to explore more game booster settings in this section. Here you can select the default profile for either performance or battery saving. Moreover, for each game you can choose the performance level you aim to achieve. If you wish to conserve battery, you can play at 60 Hz. However, if you desire smoother gameplay, you can opt for 120 Hz. Furthermore, you have the option to pause charging through USB-C with power delivery. So, if you're using the charger, using an original Samsung charger or a charger with power delivery allows you to play without overheating the battery, which clearly contributes to good performance. I want to remind you that in the description, I've provided links to purchase the power delivery chargers I personally use. Next, we will be able to customize the quick shortcuts available while playing. We'll take a look at them shortly. Additionally, you can customize the automatic activation of the touch protection feature for when you're not playing, but the game is downloading content. Additionally, it allows you to personalize the screenshots. To view the tools, we will run one of the contents. Watch, you can display the shortcuts via the navigation bar or with some floating elements, and here we have these options available. For instance, we have a touch response optimizer for the screen, which will make everything respond more quickly. We can also temporarily lock the screen, allowing the game to continue downloading content without consuming resources. We can additionally take screenshots and make screen recordings. Furthermore, we will find an option to lock the navigation bar, which helps prevent any unwanted touches. You also have the ability to lock the edge panels once more to avoid any accidental activations. Additionally, you can lock the automatic brightness and even lock Bixby. Moreover, we will have access to certain applications in pop-up mode. We can add the specific application that we want so we can easily answer a message or take a quick look at some content without needing to exit our game. Interestingly, Samsung has now disabled the extra plugin options that were available in earlier versions. For instance, we no longer have the fixed crosshair, nor do we have the frames per second counter available all the time, along with several other features. This is due to the operating system simplification. However, I hope they update this platform because at the moment it doesn't seem like the most advanced and has remained a bit lagging behind what other manufacturers provide as extra add-ons when it comes to gaming. In both scenarios, we navigated to the settings and selected the highest possible performance in terms of power management. In Call of Duty, both devices automatically offer very high graphics quality at the maximum rate. However, we also have the option to enhance the graphics quality to the highest level or prioritize the frames per second rate by slightly lowering the quality. Graphics. Be aware that if you prioritize graphic quality, you'll be able to enable numerous effects simultaneously. The processor is truly powerful, boasting excellent optimization and outstanding graphic compatibility. However, the results turned out to be different. Interestingly, the Galaxy S25, which is the base model, performed better than the Plus model. I find this intriguing because the compact model has less space for cooling. Yet in Call of Duty, it delivered a result that was practically excellent, no jitter, very good. Although the temperature was slightly high, it was still very good. On the other hand, the Plus model showed a bit more fluctuations, although it didn't decrease too much. In fact, the lowest was 50. However, you can notice some low peaks when recording the screen, and on this device, the experience has not been very satisfying for us. I'm unsure why the Plus model in my tests delivered a lower performance compared to its sibling, smaller. When we prioritize the refresh rate, we once again noticed superior performance in the base model where it maintained 120 frames per second, almost entirely stable. There were a couple of low peaks, but they were hardly noticeable during gameplay. The temperature did rise slightly more than expected, but the performance was nearly perfect. In the Plus model, the game start was somewhat unstable, yet the frame rate remained exceptionally high enough to notice this small instability. Then it again maintained a very good performance. However, note that in the Plus model, it reaches a temperature of 44.5 degrees Celsius, which is excessively high. The base model, on the other hand, does not heat up as much. In Asphalt 9, we changed the default setting to a better quality setting, going up to 120 frames per second. We set it to the highest possible level on both devices, and once again we observe a very good performance, in this case without so many issues. Differences between one model and the other. In the base model we see an average of 105 frames per second. In the graph there are some fluctuations, but the lowest peak is just 91. So it is not really perceived that it is varying in its rate of frames per second. It is always a very fluid game, however. It is necessary to reproach a little temperature management. In both cases, we see that exceed 45 degrees Celsius. Generally, when playing 120 frames per second, this device will get very hot, so it is not recommended to play with this setting. Playing at 90 or 60 frames per second would be more appropriate to avoid this much overheating. The Plus model had an average of 113 frames per second and also seems to have fluctuations in the graphics, but it happens exactly the same as in the base model, as I say. In this case, there is not much difference. Arena Breakout offers HD quality by default at a very high rate. However, we can upgrade to Ultra HD at 120 frames per second. Additionally, we can enable ray tracing at the highest level, though we must first download the necessary package from the download section. This feature is available on this device, unlike others with the same processor that we have tested. So, it really seems that this particular Ford Galaxy variant is indeed more optimized than others. The results in Arena Breakout were practically the same on both devices. In the base model, we have a performance that is practically perfect without any low peaks whatsoever. The graphics look very good and it runs at a very good fluidity. In this case, the temperature is also well controlled. It's important to note that the Plus model has a little more heating, although the performance is practically the same, and once again it should be noted. Even when playing with ray tracing, it still maintains an outstanding experience. In Henshin Impact by default, it provides us with high quality, but for the purpose of testing. We increased all the settings to the maximum possible. I remind you that in this scenario, it would be 60 frames per second. Interestingly, in this instance, the performance was nearly identical on both devices. With this, I can confirm that playing at 60 frames per second, the heating issue is not really a significant problem. This game, in my opinion, is actually more complex compared to the previous games. However, with some of the earlier games, we attempted to play them at 120 frames per second. Meanwhile, if it's available, the Genshin Impact setting caps at 60 frames per second and delivers a nearly flawless experience without causing excessive overheating. The same exact situation occurs with the Plus model, where we won't encounter too many issues. Ideally, that's the reason why I advise you to play at 60 frames per second to prevent excessive overheating. In War Thunder, we select once more the highest quality possible at 120 frames per second, along with the most complex anti-aliasing available in order to achieve the highest graphic quality. Additionally, keep in mind that it also includes ray tracing at the maximum level. In the base model, we observed 119 frames per second. Once again, we notice more fluidity compared to the Plus model, even though there is still a bit of overheating. However, overall, we can definitely say that you are able to play this content smoothly and without encountering too many drawbacks. In the Plus model, you might notice that there are more fluctuations, but it still maintains a very high rate of frames per second. Therefore, you do not really notice these fluctuations significantly. I am just highlighting it because you are observing it in the graph. Additionally, we are experiencing a little bit more heating than we would have preferred. We played Kark Street and noticed that several settings default to level 4. We maxed everything out, even setting unlimited frames per second to test its capabilities. The base model averaged 59 frames per second, maintaining a consistently stable and smooth experience. It provided excellent gameplay, although it didn't attempt to reach 120 frames per second, and the warm-up was quite high, up to 46.3 degrees Celsius. However, it is quite a complicated game, and believe me, many devices have struggled a lot with this high quality. Yet, these cell phones do not seem to be as complicated when it comes to stability. Nevertheless, this is reflected in the heating. The Plus model averaged around 55 frames per second, which again is slightly lower than the base model, with a bit more noticeable low peaks. Finally, we played Bright Memory, which I believe is the most complex game I've encountered on Android so far. We reached up to 120 frames per second and adjusted the graphics to the highest settings possible. This still results in average and low settings for some aspects, but trust me, the game is exceptionally good. On the Galaxy S25, we achieved an average of 102 frames per second with excellent stability, never dropping below 72 frames per second. So even though there were various fluctuations, it's not really noticeable. Ideally, I believe it would be best to play it at 60 frames per second. However, in this extreme test, you will observe that the temperature increased to 45.9 degrees. This confirms that playing at a slightly lower frame rate is necessary. Even though there was some heating, it's important to mention that the device consistently delivered good performance. Meanwhile, the Galaxy S25 Plus had a slightly lower performance, operating at an average of 92 frames per second. And at one point, it dropped as low as 62 frames per second. Additionally, there is a bit more instability noticed with the fluctuations that occur. Although, it should be emphasized that the experience remains quite fluid. It might not be entirely perfect for the most demanding gamers, but it is suitable for the vast majority of people. The performance is indeed very good when playing these contents. However, we have confirmed that the base model actually performs better than the Plus model when actively in the game, playing. In conclusion, I believe these devices can be quite fascinating. Personally, I feel the one that falls a bit short is the Galaxy S25 Plus. It's priced in a range where it should resemble the Galaxy S25 Ultra more closely, yet it actually resembles the Galaxy S instead. I hope Samsung will enhance this option, which is the middle sibling in the entire series. Overall, these are two very solid high-end devices that are unlikely to disappoint. Even though the hardware is somewhat limited and hasn't evolved much from previous generations, the level of optimization Samsung has achieved is truly remarkable. While the technical specifications might not seem very appealing at first glance, the user experience is satisfying in numerous situations. These are high-end devices that can genuinely be enjoyed in various scenarios. For the moment, we have reached the end of this video. If you liked it, you know you can indicate it, and we'll see you next time.